Welcome to another Blazor Power Hour.
If you remember in the beginning, we decided to make sure we got the MQTT broker working. So we did all of this work on the homepage, on the Razor page itself. And then once it's working, we realized this really shouldn't be in a short life cycle thing. So we took that entire infrastructure and we moved it into a background task. So now when this application is running, it is living in a scopeless background task. So any user can come in and get that without affecting the life cycle of others. What we did between last week and this week is we put a little connected logo at that top right corner there. So that tells the user no matter what page they're on, they can see that the MQTT broker is actually connected to the device itself. That's independent of any particular UI. What we're looking at now is the homepage. So you might be wondering, well, if that's in a background task, how is this showing data? What we're doing in the background task is we're adding those items as they come in to a database. And this front page just checks that database every 3 seconds or so or the latest information that it has. It's kind of where we are now. All these values are the latest of each item. And in the case of the line series, we're taking like the last 30 or 40 data points just to spread them out.
Yeah, it looks good so far. We've got some charts and gauges and live numbers coming in. We're doing some polling on SQLite database and displaying it all right here in a dashboard that we can drag and drop the interface on, so we can move these panels around if we wanted to. Make this view just a little bit more compact, or however we like to arrange it. Look at that. That's a nice one. And then we can clear that back out, reset the original. We're moving along. It looks like a real app almost. It's like I'm a real boy.
I
So
would say the next thing for us to do is maybe have like a history page that if we wanted to see the last, or we could put it on this page, but like a data grid that pulls X amount of time in history so that you can see these items and sort by them or group by them.
okay. So we want to create a brand new page in the app that has like a Telerik data grid to display some observable collections.
Yeah. So we would need one observable collection of MQTT data item. We don't need the special chart class we have there is just so we could display it easier. But we'll get there once you add the page. So I guess we could put something like history page or something like that.
Alrighty, so a new Razor component. What do we want to name it, guys? What's the optimal name
Keep
here?
it simple. History.
Just history.
Yeah.
There we go. Brand new page. And then do either of you want to take the wheel here, or do you want me to start typing?
I think it's probably good just to paste in the collections, like some of that boilerplate stuff, and get it in there, and I'll let you guys take over on the way it should lay out and look and work and feel. So let me do that really quick for you guys.
And then what's nice about this live share is we can both work on this at the same time. So I'm going to come up here and give this a page route. And then while you're pasting that in, I'm going to go over to the it's under main layout.razor. And in here, we have drawer items that are commented out. I'm just going to steal one of those. And we will add a text of history, an icon. Any icon suggestions, Justin? There's a
Yeah.
grid.
I like to look at the list and scroll down.
think
There you
there's a
go.
grid one there
Yeah.
we could use. It's kind of like a little set of boxes. Since we're going to be using a grid display.
Sure.
There's charts, there's cloud. Let's see what else we've got in here. I don't see like anything that says history though. We'll use
Probably
that.
do something like a table or
Yeah, the grid one will show like a table, I think. And then we'll add that and hit save. And it wants to reboot the whole app just to make that change. So we'll do that. And then back over to history. Oh, it blew up. Probably because of stuff we pasted in, right?
yeah. One thing I don't recall the name of the DB service. So that we have that being injected in.
All right. So we've got a couple of container classes here. And then we've got a date time picker, 2 date time pickers, a start and an end. We might be able to consolidate that down. We'll look at that one.
Yeah.
We've got the Telerik data grid, and we've got a couple of columns coming in from the data grid, a timestamp, topic, and value. How many points of data are in that data set, by the way?
It can be hundreds
that's a
of
good question.
thousands.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then we've got some backing fields to back up the new things that we added. So what is this error that we're running into?
I wasn't able to add any using statements because the live share doesn't
Oh,
really
okay.
tell me. Yeah.
Live share doesn't let you do that.
So Lance, just to clarify, we're not using any. We're returning all of the data from the database to search the time here. Or we
So we're
constraining
telling
it
the
in some way.
SQL, we're telling Entity Framework to do that work for us. I'm not sure exactly how it does it under the covers. So we're that method on the bottom there, it says await data service. And we pass it a start date, get measurements async. You can look into what that does.
Oh, cool.
Let's see. Measurement DB context. Nope.
So we're going to go filter for a start and end time.
Yeah, Justin, it does a where clause. So it does a where. Entity Framework will convert the where to a link, and then the database will look to all of the history and get between those two. So it should be
Cool.
efficient.
Yeah. All right. So we've got our database queries basically set up here. And then if we go back over to history, I added those using statements. So let's see if our compilation is fixed. Did not. So something's still out of whack here.
MQTT data item might be spelled differently in this app.
Okay.
So go down to the observable collection.
The error list does not make sense.
No, it doesn't. Go to the code section of that and see what type the collection is. Yeah,
there
I think
it
that's
is.
the issue. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably live share that's doing this. So these things, let's see, the models and services, I think we're using everywhere. And let me double check and see if I have, as somebody that frequently updates Visual Studio, I find this annoying that I keep losing my extensions.
Hmm.
Oh wait, no, there it is. My extension is still here. So with this extension, I can actually take and move these namespaces to a global import.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm just going to do that because I think we're going to start seeing those. That's one of them. That's one that we use a lot. We can move that out. And then we can come back to history again and recompile. And I think we'll be good now. There, that worked. And this is runnable. We should be able to run that. Hopefully we'll see a menu item. right? And we can navigate over to history. Just making sure nothing broke in that process.
Yeah.
Do I see updates coming?
I like that icon.
Chart doesn't seem to be moving. Why? I'm connected.
Timer says it's on.
Refresh. Like, I don't see this chart moving. I don't see the numbers are going. The chart's not.
Yeah. I think maybe it just needs a minute.
Yeah, we'll let that cache or something. Let's take a look. We have
Nice.
our data. Now, is this pulling like live data, or do we need to refresh it manually? What?
Well, I think the idea for this page is that you don't necessarily want live data, but you can.
Okay.
Right. Let's say you make the end time now, like you go to the calendar and change it to now, it'll get the most recent. But usually when you're on this page, you're only concerned about the last 24 hours, the last 12 hours, that kind of thing.
So if I change these date ranges, we will get different data set, except that if I go in the future, it's not going to really change anything, right? Let's see, we want to do, let's go back a week, and it should probably like
I'm
clear
not
out
sure I
most of
hooked
this.
up those
Oh, okay. Well,
selectors. Oh, maybe
yeah,
I
you
did.
did. Yeah, so I knew this would be empty because it went back before like we collected data. So that's good. That shows that these are working. I am going to look at something real quick here. If I go to the 12th on this one, hit set. So the date range is kind of broken, right? So we've got an end date that is prior to the start date.
Yeah.
So I noticed you used two date pickers here, but this is something that I advocated for when we first started building the control suite. And if we go over to demos, we should have in here, it's under editors.
Date range picker?
Date range picker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this one has those things built in, and it shows a range as well. So we might want to replace those with a date range picker. I don't know if you were ready for me to start modifying.
No,
things
this
that
is the perfect.
You didn't even look at it. You just want to change it.
Yeah.
So we would set up a date range picker here. Let's go
Like
to.
I even imagine you guys maybe having two, one that like let's the user say, just give me the last 7 days, because in most data UIs that are similar to this, it'll have the range, but it'll also have like a drop down that lets you quickly select the range without you having to select in the calendar.
So here's some of the features that we have. We have auto switch parts, which I think that's if you start backwards like this, it'll maybe not.
Prevent the bug you just tried to force.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens when we turn that off. I'm trying to see what that did. Auto switch parts. We just added a bunch of new features to this. It's like we had the basics.
I think you might need to zoom in a little bit, Ed.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I don't see the auto switch parts in the documentation right here. I'm trying to remember what that does. Auto or allow reverse is the one I was thinking of that will automatically fix it if it's backwards. So there's an allow reverse. By default, I think it stops you from, there it is, allow reverse selection.
That's handy.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I know I told you this before the show.
Nice features there.
Interesting.
I need to drop off to handle some team things and let you guys run with the UI. But that was the idea. Just, we know the database is there. The other hint I was going to drop is that if you try to group by the topic, it's kind of weird. Like it doesn't do what you expect it to. because the topics aren't individual. Like if I imagine I would want to group by, yeah, make any selection so that we have something in there. Okay, now drag and drop the topic to the grouping. It's only going to group by current state, by like that particular one. Now, if you collapse the group state, I'm not seeing the other groups.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So I'm wondering if maybe we need to create a separate class for this where you strip out that first part, the solar assistant / whatever, then you have a different string. But that's just something I thought of. Like if I wanted to see different groups for battery state, a group for voltage, something like that.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm trying to
Yeah,
think
that sounds fun.
why the grouping is working the way it is. It's very odd.
I would think I'd get one group for each value, right? Instead of
Yeah.
each. Yeah. I don't know, but I thought I'd leave you with that one. After you make the UX for the date selection, good.
Okay. Yeah.
Filtering and sorting works just fine. It was just a grouping thing. I wasn't sure of.
Huh.
Yeah, that's a strange one. Like, let's see.
All right, folks. I will
That's
see
how
you
it should
next
look.
week. You guys have
All right,
a
Lance. Thanks for setting us up, buddy.
Bye, Lance.
So another thing we could look at on here too is the fact that it probably pulls way too much data, although it's nice and responsive, I guess, because we're running server-side Blazor.
Yeah.
Even though we have 27,000
Yeah, that could
items,
get out of hand real quick.
it's
I mean,
quick,
how much
but-
have we even saved? How long has it been running?
Yeah, so we can make this query a lot faster by changing up some of the logic here. But let's take a look at this date range picker, and then we could try to minimize some of the UI here, make the UX a little bit better. So I think for the most part, let's see. We've got start date. Start value would be start date. End value would be end date. I'm just pasting in Lance's code to the sample that I put in.
Yeah.
And then the debounce delay is a property on the component that stops it from like updating too quickly, I think. So you don't get like your database being hit every time somebody clicks on a date. So this is set at 200 by default, it looks like. We'll just hard code that in there instead of setting up a whole property for it. Let me just say 200. And then I think is that it? On chain. Oh, he's firing an on change event.
Yeah. I don't know what's happening in there.
Handling the on change event manually. So on start date change, on end date change.
So he's calling the same method in both.
Update grid async. All right. So on change. Update grid async.
Perfect.
Right. And then let's try commenting these out.
Yeah, get one more div there. Maybe not.
Let's try that first. Yeah. I think that one's going to close that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Let's try that and see what happens. Let's see if I got it the first time. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Let's see if we've got. Hey, Mr. Salt and Burnham. How's it going, Chris? We're doing full stack development today. I know you're a fan of that phrase. And let's see, did that update? That did not update. Let's just close this whole window out because sometimes it gets crazy with. See, it's still running this in the background. let's go in debug mode. So we have a full stack app here, Chris. We have a front end, a back end, everything in between. It's kind of an all-in-one project, really, but it's doing all the things. Our chart seems to be working more friendly this time. And then if we go here, we've got our data. That is our date range picker. Okay, because you could tell by the handles that it's displaying. And it's doing that weird thing again. There it goes. So I want to grab the start and move it. And there, that's the nice experience we want, right?
Yeah, but you're in.
And then what's nice here too
October.
is you can zoom out. Let's see. Why didn't I go to the date I wanted though? September. Let's go to today through the end date. And then it's, there we go. That's working now.
Yeah, looks like you got it the first time.
Cool. I was talking about the date or the amount of data here. So it's now up to 33,000 records. And eventually this is going to be a long call to the database to pull all of that in, because there's nothing that we're doing besides the date range selection. So if somebody came in here, a year down the road and selected the entire year, this would like bog down, right? This would be, hundreds of thousands of records. We don't want to do that. So we should probably prevent that from happening. So let's go ahead and get rid of those old date pickers. And then have you used the, what is this thing called? Let me pull up the docs here.
What are you looking for?
It is the data. See, I think we keep it under manual operations. So it's going to go in the on read, but there is a helper for entity framework in here. This is it right here. To data source result. The data, what is the name of that thing? I always forget the name of it because it's wordy. It is wordy.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
The data source
extension
result
package?
object.
Oh, okay.
Trying to remember the long name for it. Let's see here. All right, let's look at the source of this. This is one of the demos up on the site. And basically what it does is you're going to take all of the metadata from the data grid and pass that off to Entity Framework. So Entity Framework can provide a query that is only, say, the page that you're on and the dates that are selected and so on. So to do that, we have a helper in the framework. And what we need to do is we need to leverage the onRead method, because right now we're using just straight data binding. And we're setting this up on the update grid async method. Let's see here. And I think he's abstracted the query away as well, which won't be a problem. We can still pass it along. But we'll probably need to change this update grid async method behind the scenes. Or I mean, not update grid. Where's he getting the data at exactly? So he calls data add range. And we're going to all right.
Trying to reverse engineer Lance's code live here. What is happening?
So Lance does a lot of XAML stuff, and in XAML there's a lot of MVVM style patterns that go on. And we don't quite need those in Blazor. So while it does work, and it works well, it looks like, we could probably do away with a lot of this code in Blazor. We don't have to do things like raise property changes and all of that stuff. So if we could just get down to the bare query, we may actually be able to ditch the. Oh, this is the observable collection itself that I'm looking at. I forgot, where did he say he was actually pulling the data in? So we've got our data service. Where's data service being used? Am I missing it? Where?
Is it done in the upgrade grid?
Update grid async.
Oh, that's right
It's
there.
got data clear and
Get measurements.
oh, the get measurements. That's what I was
Yeah.
looking for. Jeez. And Visual Studio is not helping me. It's not helping me. Services. Manually go find this. Okay.
Nice.
Add measurement async. That's what I was looking for. So we'll probably create another version of this get measurement async. That's the one. Where it is a public async ask list of MQTT data item. Actually, I think it's going to return something different in this case, but we'll run with this for now. We'll overload this method. We still want the date ranges. I'm trying to remember how to make this work with external queries in addition to what's in the grid, but we want a Telerik data source. Where's it? Data Telerik. Yeah, can't remember the name of it. Let's look at the demo again. I promise it's going somewhere good.
Do you need to bring in the
Data source
the data source extensions?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you. Using data source extensions, and then that should have our object in it. Telerik data source request. Is it? Nope. Where is that namespace at? Unread. There we go. That's the docs I was looking for. 2 data source requests, but we need the actual object first. And what this is going to do is we can just call one extension method and it's going to do all the querying for us. Just need to find the right example here. Read items. We're doing it all in one view on this. See, in this example here, we've got the full like skip, take, and count. And we can do away with all of that. Where is the exact code, though, I'm looking for? Why can I not find this? Data source request. There we go. Maybe it's not Telerik. It's just data source request. Let me try taking that off of there. Data source request using Telerik data source. There we go.
Oh, nice. Good find.
So a data source request has all the info on paging, sorting, and filtering. So we can turn on like basically every feature in the grid and pass that off to Entity Framework. Entity Framework will then make those queries ad hoc for us. We don't need to write individual lines of code for each one of those things, each one of those features. We could say await db context measurements that I've got like no IntelliSense, I think is part of the problem here. I'm going to reboot Visual Studio.
Restart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this
While
is
you're doing that, you gotta let Lance commented that he's still watching, even though he
Oh.
has to do something else. And you've got did you know it was International Blazor Day?
it's International Blazor Day. All right. So on the
You know,
calendars, I didn't know about that one.
just kidding.
Oh.
Blazor, Mr. Mercury said that. I was like, okay. I didn't see the JK. I was like, oh,
So I'm
there's a day
thinking
for everything.
that that live share was hanging us up.
Yeah.
When you stop getting IntelliSense, like you're typing things and not getting feedback, and you think you're making errors.
Yeah.
And
We could just leave it alone for now since I'm not doing anything.
TV
That way you can.
context dot, there we go. Measurements dot to data source result. And then we pass in the data source request, which I called data source request. And then we are waiting, but there is no awaiter because I didn't do the async. Is that right? And then it's going to return something different now because this is now, so when you do a to data source result, you get back a data source. You get back a data source. Yeah. So you take a request and it returns back a result instead of this. So it's going to be a data source result here. And we may actually need some other pieces. I'm trying to remember exactly how to do this. But what's nice is this is all of the metadata from the data grid being passed in and queried. So it's going to take the page, and when we're looking at the grid, like any grid, give me a grid, give me a grid. It will only, for example, query the first 10 records of the results. So even though there's 590 items in the database, what you're sending back from the database is 10 records. And when I click to the next page, it's going to trigger that query again and get the next 10 records rather than pulling all 590 into memory, which is what we're doing now.
Nice.
And it's in the tens of thousands.
We still get that acknowledgement on the grid that these items exist and there are this many and pages and whatnot.
Yeah. And temporarily, I'm going to leave the date and time, the start and end date, just sitting here unused, just because I want to grab all the data back, just all of it, and not have to worry about whether I queried the right date range yet. And then we'll add those back in. And it shouldn't really it should be more efficient actually than grabbing the date range version of it, because we're only going to grab the first 10 records anyway. So while we kind of troubleshoot that, we can leave those dates and times out. So now if I call get date time or get measurements async on this history page, we're going to have to update this view as well. So right now we're binding directly to the data source, and we're not using an on read event. You have to use the on read event for this to work right. So on read. Why? Come on, IntelliSense is just on read, and then we need to set up, an on read event. Task on read, and then we'll do some stuff in here. Don't don't know exactly why we're clearing this. And then we also don't need this observable collection. It can just be a regular collection. Because, again, Lance does a lot of MVVM stuff. And if we were doing if we were grabbing the values in real time with like signal R or polling like we are on the dashboard, we'd want an observable collection. But Blazor kind of has a MVVM style implementation under the hood already through data binding. So whenever we trigger the on-read event, it's going to do basically the same thing as what an observable collection would do. Unless, again, there's like some specific thing, like data being pushed from a non-life cycle event. So we'll just change that over to be MQTT data item. Go ahead and shove that in just a basic list will do. We can even break that down into something more basic like an array or whatever if we wanted. Data. And then just go ahead and make it a backing field. Doesn't even really need to be a property. So we'll temporarily just take that out. And then onRead is going to fire from the data grid itself. So the data grid is now in control of when it wants data. So that would be, for example, if we click the next page, or if it doesn't have any data when it's initializing, or we changed a filter, it's going to fire that on read event and say, the user interacted with some of the metadata. Let's go ahead and refresh the data results. So I'm going to need the docs again on this one. We're going to take it to, so we've got our data source in this example. And then we need to call, we're doing this through a service, but we need the task. That's what it is, read items. Because there's an argument that's set up with onRead. So we need to get that. So whenever the grid fires onRead, it passes these arguments over. And the args has a request object in it. And we're going to need that. So just for example's sake, we'll go ahead and stash that in a variable for a minute. So this is going to be all the metadata, right? That's our paging, sorting, filtering. That's all in that request. And then we need to send that to the database. So we'll do our result equals wait data service get async start date end date comma, and then we've got an overload for request. So now we're passing three objects over, well, two dates and an object over that has a lot more data in it. And then we're going to get a result back, but that result is, let's go ahead and make this explicit. This would be a data source result object. That's what should be coming back. And the data source result is a little bit different than just getting the data back from the database, because it's going to have a little bit more information with it. So we get the data source result back. It has the result of the query and the total number of items, and that's going to help with the paging part of this. So we don't have to write any of the paging logic into our SQL statements. So we need to do that. We need to say args.data. And then when we do this, it will update the data view. So args.data is going to be results.data. And then args dot total is going to be result dot total.
You got args to string.
Oops. Thank you. Like I said, IntelliSense is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
So now we're relying on the grid to make the event, raise the event. So the grid's going to raise an event. It's going to say, hey, you did something, you changed filtering, whatever it is, I need data. We get that request for data from the arguments. The arguments already contain the current data in the total, but we're going to send that, the current, data total, etc. Object to this get all measurements async method. And then get all measurements async is going to pass that metadata along to entity framework, where we call to data source results async. Now, this is like a magic black box method, which most of entity framework is. I think everybody probably agree on that one. And the engineering behind it is there is a set of metadata that gets transformed from C# syntax called expression trees, and those get translated into SQL code. So there's basically things in there that say I'm going to skip X records, take this many records, apply this where clause, and that gets transformed from a C# syntax to SQL syntax. That runs on the SQL server, and then we get our data back, and then we map all of the results back to their various bits. So that brings us back to the history page, where now we have the new data source back from the result. We're going to apply that to the arguments, and then the total records that were fetched with that query back to the total. So it can recalculate paging and all of that stuff.
Awesome.
But this saves us from, say, let's see, let's run this really quick. If it'll,
Yeah, I see it in action.
as I say, I don't know if we can, let's run it and see what happens. I don't know if it's all set up yet, but we'll take a look. But it saves us for, nope, missing something here. Update grid async does not exist. Oh, let's go ahead and just kill this for a minute. Run that again, because where else am I calling that from? Oh, it's being called everywhere. On after render. We shouldn't be doing anything in on after render anymore. And then we'll go ahead and just comment those out temporarily. Save. And then run. See if we get the basics going again. Whoops. Get all measure async. Why is that? Why is it failing here but not in my like editor window? Method does not take 3 arguments. How?
Is it not recognizing the overload
Public
somehow?
async. Oh. Is it because it's a data source request or data
Are
source
we
result?
passing a data source request?
Data source request. So there's the data source request.
Data source result is what we're passing in there. Is that
Did I
right?
pass? No, the request is args
Okay.
request.
The request
Which
should return a
this
result.
actually could go here, but I was just trying to show where that came from initially. Get all measurements async. It's showing no overloads at all.
Well, are we still using
It's only showing this.
the original method? You want to comment that out and see if it recognizes?
That's strange. I don't know why it's only showing that one. We should have one that does this. Here, let's do this instead. Let's call, we'll just tack on request to the end of that. And then go back to history and call that method. Pile and see if it blows up and says
So-
that method doesn't exist. That's weird. It wouldn't overload it.
Yeah.
Maybe because it's different return type. I don't know. You'd think there'd be another error, not the overload thing. All right, let's try this again. Jump over to history, and there we go. We've got our data.
Ooh, 56,000 records.
So we're pulling in 25 records at a time, though. So this is 1 through 25 of 56,000 records. So this is nice and snappy, even though it's pulling all of that. Let's see. It's hard to tell with all of that coming in if we can see this being queried or not. Yeah, it's going to be a needle in a haystack with all these inserts going on. There should be a select in there somewhere if it's being written out. If it's being logged. There is that one. Yeah, I think that's it there.
Did you find it? Nice.
No, that's an insert as well. Shoot. It's happening so fast, like it's just polluting the console.
Yeah.
We need to figure out how to turn that off, really. Trying to think, like, okay, we have our date here. We can also filter on date this way. So we're probably going to want to remove one of these filtering options because these kind of conflict with each other. So we either want to leave this one in place and say we want everything greater than, this one does, greater than equal to before, and is before is after, but it doesn't do a range built in.
Yeah, I like the range better.
I like the range
should be
better, but we want to turn filtering off for that column because that's just
Should be a quick turn off, yeah.
Yeah, that's just an awkward behavior to have. You know, you're going to filter by a date range and then you're going to filter again by a date. That's asking for users to be very confused. So let's go in here, and then on the date stamp, we'll say filterable false. That should turn that off. And then did it hot reload? Can it hot reload that? Oh, it did.
Boom. Yeah.
So that one's gone. And then I don't know if Lance is still watching in the background, but do we need
Probably.
the full time stamp on here? Does that matter, or do we just want to show a date? Because we can update the formatting on that as well, right?
Yeah.
Display format, and then I'm trying to remember how these get entered. I think it's just, is it day or month?
I think it should be in curly brackets.
Is it capital YY? I always forget these.
Maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know.
Always forget these. So you say curly brackets. I will go along with that. I think you're right. I think you are correct.
Yeah, it should be
And
this.
boom. Input string was not in the correct format. Do we need like the 0 or something first? Is it 0 colon? I can never remember these.
No, me either. Always look at the list.
Or we could do this. Oh, wrong button. wrong button again.
And this is how you use Copilot
Yeah.
when you forget how to do something.
So I just want the month, day, and year here. I'm trying to remember what the string format syntax is. So we'll just grab it from Copilot. Just saves us from jumping into documentation. This is how to write it in code. Name of field, date filterable, date format. It did not put curly brackets on it. It's also got it like very lengthy. I don't think we need. I think it's just giving us the long version of it because I kind of asked very generally how to do that. So we don't need like,
Yeah.
we could keep the full year there too. Let's see what that looks like if it is able to
We're
recover.
going to get a lot of each
that,
value with the same date.
that did not work. Let's try this again. I think you're right with the curly braces. No, does not like curly braces either. Or we could just go look at the documentation ourselves, right?
Yeah, I think if you do the curly braces, you do the 0 colon.
Data display format. And the first thing it has.
Yeah, you were right with the 0.
It's that. We were both right. You said I had curlies. I said I had a 0. The rest of it we couldn't remember because we're humans. And then AI didn't help us at all. And then that's not quite. This is what happens when Europeans write code.
Yeah. Yep.
There's other date formatters simpler than this one, I think. Should make it like culture invariant or whatever, but we'll do globalization another day. That's good enough for now. We could actually bring this down to 2, and then we'll do the numbers, I think, instead of the first 3 letters. So we've got the filter set up on the grid. We could filter data here. This is... why am I not getting a drop down? Did it break? There we go. Oh, okay. So I'm going to enable a different type of filtering here because I like it better for something like this anyway. So for the topic, I'm going to say filter type. Editor type is filter type. Is it filter menu or filter editor? Filter, oh, come on, properties. Filter editor menu type. Filter menu type. Dot checkbox list. And what that's going to do is instead of being like an ad hoc like text filter, I think we need to refresh the page to get that. Might have to reboot the app to get that working.
You have to click the, yeah.
Reboot the app. It still keeps showing a text box and it shouldn't. History. No, we still have, did I do it on the right column? No, that's not right. On topic, filter menu type.
Yeah, you're on the right column.
Checkbox list. Boy. Let's go to data binding, auto generation, visible.
I think you have to go to the filter section.
Filtering, thank you.
Yeah.
And filter menu. Filter mode. That's for the entire grid. I just want to change it for checkbox list filtering. Filter menu type. menu, and then
It may not work with on read. Is that what they're saying?
yeah, let's see, filter menu mode, menu type. Filter descriptor. We have to write a special filter descriptor for it if we're using read. Is that what it's saying? We do. Okay, we'll do that later. We will do that later. So what that will do if it's turned on and we're not using the read function, which looks like it just needs a little more implementation on our part, is it will consolidate everything that is the same and put it in a checkbox. So every time you have, like it will group all of these battery things into a list of checkboxes and take the distinct items and put them as an option. So you would have a drop-down list that would have like battery, power, etc., and you just check that instead of having to type in like this. So this is only pulling battery now. Contains, yeah, equal to. I have to be explicit with that. So it avoids that type of behavior and just gives you checkboxes with things that already exist in there. It's kind of like how Excel works with its filtering. It's a feature that I like, but it takes a little bit more effort if you're using custom data reads. Right, so we don't have the date range back in there yet. And I think to get the date range, we just have to leverage the method that we already have. So we should, because this is all entity framework, we should be able to let it compile that query itself by calling the same where statement in line and then to data source at the end, because it's all iQueryable. So a where statement puts out an iQueryable of T, and then this is an extension on iQueryable, so it just runs in line. You can just chain it all together. And that should still get our date range back in there. Let's try that again.
Like magic.
Yeah. So I said that to data source request object it literally is magic. So 924 through 925, we shouldn't see anything but that in here. I think it's all we have data for those today. So we could check this by extending this date range out a day. And something's not right because we didn't data bind on that behavior. Remember, I took that out.
The on change, yeah.
Let's see. To trigger that data bind, now that we're using on read, I'm trying to remember if we need to do something special here, or if we just move this out to a method and, well, because we're not going to get this on read event. Trying to remember how to combine these together now. It can be done. On read event, data binding. So I need to look into this on read event.
I think you need to go to the manual data source operations section.
Oh, where's that
If you
at?
scroll down a little bit.
Scroll down on
Yeah.
this side. Yeah, manual
There you
data
go,
source
yeah.
operations.
And then, yeah, which one of these? Get information
Grouping
from the data
might
source request? Okay.
might have a clue in here. And this is additional. So task read items, that's going to be the on read event. Generate data. That's just creating a data set to check. That's not the one I want. Aggregates on read, get information from data source request. Oh, where is it? Custom paging, the remote service. I'm trying to remember how to make this work with another. I think Lance is trying to help here. Can you use the date range picker value instead of the first column filter instead? Is that I think that's what we're trying to do. We could place it in there too if that's what you're asking. I think we could put it right up in the header.
Template.
I'm just trying to remember how to trigger the additional maybe saying that might trigger it if we put it in there, but I don't think it will, because there's an editor or template for this. If we collapse this or expand it rather to a full grid column, we can do the, let's see, we've got in the wrong section. There's a tile. Where's it getting tile layout from?
Let me see in the templates.
Not getting
You
a
want a
IntelliSense
filter
for this.
menu template? Filter menu template, I believe.
Is it on a grid column itself?
Let me look at the example. Yeah. Filter menu template. There you go.
And then we have something inside of it.
Yeah. And so
Is it like content or is it just straight in there? We put whatever we want.
you can put whatever you want in there.
Okay, cool. Let's
Yeah.
try that and let's see if we can drop this in there. I'm going to leave the flex stuff out for now because it might mess it up. Refresh that. Load the page again. And
We should turn it back on. I think we left the filterable false, even though.
oh, good catch. I'm like, wow, it's not even showing. Look at that. Let's see, it looks like it's trying to hot reload that, and it it put it back in, but it's not the filter. Or I mean the custom. That's not our custom thing in there.
Oh, that's strange.
Yeah. We have the filter menu template. Maybe it just, let's try reloading the whole thing. Hot reload. Don't trust it. Sorry. Sorry, Microsoft friends. Fool me once. Shame on me. All right. Yeah, it's not doing what I want it to do. Filter. Maybe we have to tell it filter.
I'm not sure. I just dropped a link to the example I was looking at in our
Okay.
private chat if you want to take a look at it.
Thinking we might have to tell it. Filter menu tag. Let's see the example. Yeah, there's nothing else but that. And then we have to create filter descriptors. I've done this before. I know. Oh, I know where to find an example of this. I'm like sitting here. I feel like I've done this a million times.
I feel like
Demos.
this is the kind of thing that even though you've done a million times, you forget how involved it might be. Like it
See.
just takes 15 minutes to go through, and you're like, I can drop this in here. Like, oh wait a minute, to look at this.
Okay. So this demo got changed. We need to go back in time. We need to go to the old version of this. When I wrote the original version of this, it was way more complex, showed off a lot of really cool things, but then some folks internally here said this is too much upkeep. Let's simplify it and bring it back to something a little more manageable. So those very detailed examples got chucked. And Lance is going to be like, yeah, people keep asking for this demo. Every time I bring it up, he says, customers keep asking for the old version. And no, the old version is probably going to just be on my GitHub. It's probably the easiest. Your repos. We probably have a distilled version of this somewhere that I'm just not remembering. But there we go. There's the old version of the Blazing Coffee Warehouse app. Client pages. Sales reports. Let's see if this has what I wanted. So we're doing the read items here. Start value, end value. So I'm doing some filtering. Oh, that's on the chart though. It's not on. There it is. Filter descriptors. So whenever you're interacting with the data source request, the pieces of metadata that I was talking about are called filter descriptors. So those need to be written out to where the data source request understands what you're trying to do. So we need to create this set of filter descriptors. And that is going to be the metadata. So we create a new filter descriptor of start and end. And then these are called transaction date here. This is going to be, I think, the field name. So those are on the field of, I don't know if we can use name of, or maybe we can. Let's try to drop name of in there. Name of, take the @ symbol out. There, date stamp. And then the filter operation is going to be, it's going to be greater than the start date and less than the end date. Does that make sense?
Where's the start value and the end value coming from? Do we need to change that to?
Yeah, is IntelliSense not helping here? It should be start date, end date, right? Start date,
Yeah,
end
I
date.
think so.
Good catch. We're not getting feedback from the
I don't know why
compiler.
it took that. I was like, what?
Yeah, that was a good catch though, because it's because I'm not. Oh, I was running the app still, maybe. So that would have definitely thrown red underscores. The Justin compiler's working better than the IDE.
Nice.
So we set those up. And then back to my GitHub example, wherever that decided to go off to. I didn't close it, right? Where's my GitHub example? No. I lost it. I bet it was in the app that was running. Like, you know how Visual Studio spins up like that sandboxed version of the browser? I probably opened the link in there to GitHub, and then when I closed the app, it killed my...
Yeah.
I make that mistake all the time. I just see a browser window. I just start typing in it. Pages, sales reports, sales. My gosh, my dog is like going nuts. There's probably a cat or something outside. So let's see. I've got a grid in this one. Trying to see where I'm making the date range selection at. Start range. There it is. Date range picker. I put it in the toolbar, the grid toolbar. Let's try that. Some smart person worked on that app before me. Or it was me. I don't know. All right, grid columns. There's also grid toolbar. Where's that go?
That should come right after the.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Did we change the name of
Oh,
it
it's
since that
yeah,
version?
it was renamed. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That was a breaking change. That's what I
The
said.
toolbar template was better.
The
I
dev
think
team
that was
was
like version 4.0 that changed.
yeah. The engineering team was like, "This is too much to upkeep. We're we're scaling it back." So whenever there was a breaking change, they had to go back and fiddle with the demo too much. All right, so we need a event handler too for this. So when these get changed, it triggers the filtering mechanism. So start value change handler, and all of this was for efficiency. And change event
That would be
handler.
important with all that data.
There was a lot more code involved in doing this than I thought. It's the custom filter bit that's catching us, really. It just basically tells you why in here, why we had to do this. So we don't really need to console write line, but whenever the filtering, we select a date, it's going to trigger this, and it's going to pass in the date and set the value, start value, which I think is a backing field. Yeah, we have some initial dates. Do we have those already? We do. Start date, end date. That
Right.
Why is, like, I'm not running the app this time. I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to close Visual Studio. Like, I should be getting feedback here, and it keeps tripping me up that.
Yeah. You see that zippy responsive feedback.
Well, I've got basically fields or properties that don't exist, and it's not throwing a compiler error to tell me that I'm trying to use something that doesn't exist. And it's really like jarring to try to write code when you expect something to happen and it doesn't. So start value should be underscored right now. It's not a thing. It's not in scope.
Yeah.
Why am I not getting? It's still not doing it. So I'm gonna have to like reinstall Visual Studio or something, or reboot my machine. It should be start date and then end date. So I want to make sure I get the right text in there. End date, not end value. And then let's try to compile, see if it picks up any errors that are sitting there. Yeah, there's a ton of them. Start value, should be start date, end date, build again. Oh boy. These are nullable. Let's see if we can get away with taking the nullable off. I think they're nullable because in that example, they could be just turned off completely, which would make them null. But in here, we're kind of enforcing that there's some sort of date range. There's no way to clear it completely. Okay, grid.getState. We need a reference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, is that supposed to be
Yeah, I don't think we need that
binding to
since we're
data
doing on
still?
read.
Yeah, I think that comes off there, and then we want at ref. Serious grid. All right, just checking comments here. Let's see. And then I think Lance was guiding us through this, and I didn't see his comments.
Yeah, he's been commenting.
Await get chart data. There is like, this is making me so upset. There is no method get chart data in this at all. Like, why is Visual Studio not jumping in and saying you cannot do that? Build. I got to keep
What's
building
going
just to
on
get feedback.
116? I can't see the whole line there.
116.
Yeah.
Filter descriptors.
What is transaction
State
date?
where. This should be name of was it MQTT item? Date stamp, timestamp. I think that's that one.
Nice. And then
Good
I think
catch.
you need to tell the grid what object we're using. It's like set the T item since we're using on read.
Oh, okay. Yep. Another good one. T item. This MQTT data item.
Nice.
So it's type aware and then build again. See what blows up. Jeez.
Oh, right. We have to set that property.
Oh, we need a back
Yeah,
end.
yeah. So make a
We need
Telerik
to back
grid
this
named
up.
grid. Oh, and then it has to.
Oh, jeez, come on. Visual Studio is just.
Does it need to be a grid of object chart data item? I think.
Yeah, it needs to be T. Data item.
Nice. Oh.
Yeah, this is like I might as well be whiteboarding at this point. Like, none of the IntelliSense features are working. It's auto completing random gibberish.
Yeah, this is wild. Should we rebuild?
I just did, and it
Okay.
threw like 100 more, 21 more errors at us. Grid is a local variable used before it's declared. Okay, at ref. Yeah, the state of Visual Studio here is throwing me for a loop. Like, I need to kind of reboot my machine and come back to make this work. So I've got a grid property here. There was something I was going to fix with it. It's broken. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, it needs to be nullable. That needs to happen. Attributes are not valid in this context. Okay. Yeah. Visual Studio's totally lost it. Either there's a missing bracket in here, or like this whole view is just botched, or I need to reboot the whole computer. Yeah, that's probably true, Mr. Magoo. Let's see if that actually helps. Let's do that. Let's do an add. Where's the thing at? Move namespace, extract to component. Is it on this menu? Whoops. history. Create code behind. Let's see if that'll help us any. Or make it worse. At this point, who knows? Let's take all of the code and just dump it in here. Well, at least I see like there's something happening. Non-nullable field data must contain a value. So there's actual legitimate warnings coming up now. Thank you, Mr. Magoo. Let's run with that idea. All right, there we go. Hey, look at that. Razor compiler failed us again. Does not contain set state. There's also a couple errors with our descriptors. Grid set state.
Might be set state async.
That could be. There's get state. Get state. Oh, it could be null. That's what that is. That is not a, like this is how much just a little bit of a underscore can help. Ooh, didn't like that. Maybe
can
null.
You see the whole? I can't see like the rest of the line there.
Oh, let's try to move that over.
I'm missing a closing parentheses here, maybe. Somewhere.
I copied this in. Unless, oh no, you're right. I didn't copy it in. I put that line in there. Good catch. And then set state. This might have got.
I think this one actually might be async. Oh.
Set state async. Set state async.
I don't know why they're not both async, but.
Possible null. State might be null there. State. Is it state that is worried about being null, or is it the grid that is worried about being null?
Can't tell.
It's the grid. Nope. It says grid may be null there, but I'm using.
Well, if the grid isn't null, surely it has a state.
Yeah, I'll worry about the warnings later. Just one warning. We can fix up at another date. Let's try to rebuild and see if 21 of the errors go away. Look at that. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Mr. Magoo, you're on top of things today. Simple fix, thrown in a code behind, get rid of the Razor compiler. Jeez. It's really not that complex either, but when you're flying blind. Oh, geez. Okay, we get an error. We do not have detailed errors on. So we can't see what that was. Let's go turn detailed errors on. We do that through the configuration and app settings. Thank you. What's the thing? Is it detailed?
I think so.
I think it's that simple. All because of my date range picker idea.
It'll be worth it.
Invalid operation exception. Object of type grid column does not have a property that matches the name fee.
Oh, well.
There's a typo somewhere.
Find fee.
There's a typo. probably something in like probably yep.
Yeah.
I was typing field and it got caught up in there. And I'm gonna blame that on IntelliSense too, because it probably didn't autocomplete something. When I was trying to say field, it just got stuck. There we go. And then if we choose some date off in the future, it should get nothing back. Cool. We did it.
Yeah.
Good Lord. That should have been way easier. Should have been way easier. But it still doesn't seem right. That should have brought back data, in my opinion. Oh, we still have that stupid thing. That needs to go now.
But can we?
Field. This template didn't get used because it's in.
I'm curious why
it's
it
in
didn't
that
work in the template.
Yeah, I'm confused. Filter false because we're using our filter instead of the built-in one.
Yeah.
But for the sake of efficiency, this would be worth it. Run. Thought I hit run. I must have hit something else.
That happens to me often. I swear I push it and then I wait. I'm like, oh, push it again.
All right, we have data. That is a good thing. Let's try messing with some of the dates. No data there. Go back to September through. There we go. It's working
Nice.
now.
Yeah.
And this is ultra responsive at 82,000 records. So what we've done is we have a custom filter here. This is not something that's built into the grid. It will do a date filter, but not a date range filter by default. So we added a date range component into the toolbar region of the data grid. And then because it's not a native filter mechanic of the data grid, we had to set up these things called filter descriptors, which just basically describe how these filters work to the data grid, or how they actually filter the data. So when the data grid updates, it can read those filter descriptors into the data source request object. Then that ball of data gets packaged up as the data source request. So every time this on read event fires, let's get this guy here. Every time that on data on read event fires, you get these event arguments that are set up, which have that data source request. And because we described these data source or data filter descriptors, it knows now what that is for. So when that request hits, it looks into these little helper functions and it says, on this MQTT data item date stamp column, we're going to do the filter operation of, is this field greater than, using the start date from that date range picker. And then the same thing for the end date of the date range picker to say, is it less than? So it basically sets up that, date start date is greater than less than, it's end date is less than, like that. It's basically telling it that, and that gets passed over to our service, get measurement request async, calls this magic method called to data source result async, and then hands off that filter descriptor to NAD framework in a format it understands. That builds a SQL query. The SQL query only filters those date ranges and only filters the paging information Any topic filters we added and any value filters we added, it would also pass off any grouping that is done. So the grouping is done inside of that as well. Any other metadata that will affect our SQL query is passed along in those filter descriptors. So when you get data back, you're only getting back 25 records. No matter what I do here, unless it's less than 25 records, of course, I will only ever get back 25 records at a time. So the maximum I will ever query my database for is 25 records. Hopefully that made sense. And that is an efficiency savings versus pulling all 87,000 records in and filtering them in memory.
Oh yeah.
So this would be the quote right way to do it. If you have anything that is more than a few thousand records, this is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we should probably just leave on that note, like
Yeah, I
before
think
we
that was
burn
a
all the
good.
boats. Like,
Let's not break it again.
Yeah.
Until next week.
so I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to go into Git. If I can find where it's running. I lost all my windows in the process there. GitHub. No, not Copilot. It's just Git. View history. Where's my thing at? My little Git window. What's the name of that window? Git.
Yeah, I'm unsure.
Where's the Git panel at? Today is not my day. That's settings. Git changes. View. There it is. That's the one I was looking for. Thank you again, Mr. Magoo. And then finally, I just hit this. Let GitHub Copilot sort it out. What did we do to our project?
A few things. I'm sure we'll forget something.
Tell me the changes.
Nice.
That looks good. We'll sync that and call it a day. Thank you for joining us for the live stream. So you could see you got to see how to troubleshoot stuff. Like, when all of your IntelliSense fails because the Razor compiler is, God, I love you, Razor compiler. I should just package that show up and just send it to the feedback portal.
Yeah. What happened here? Explain.
Yeah. So whenever that fails, when in doubt, move everything to a .cs file and just run with that instead, because I think that was like a big part of all of our problems. And then knowing where to look, I need to find our documentation on the filter descriptor thing. I know there's probably a link somewhere we were missing because we're trying to read docs on a live stream. But I know
Yeah.
that's documented somewhere better than some old project
Trying to
they
rush
did
through.
5 years ago. But we did find it anyway and get it implemented. So that's good. All right, guys, before we get off on a tangent, we'll see you later.